Oif Healy had been stepping through the Green Line carriages of Dublin's Luas for nearly 7 years, clipping tickets and greeting commuters with a lilting "thanks a million" that slipped as easily from her tongue as change into a fare box. The early morning run from Broombridge to Bride's Glen was her favourite. Office workers pressed paper cups to sleepy lips, tourists squinted at maps, and students fumbled for leap cards at the last possible second. Routine, predictable, comfortable, exactly how Awif liked her life since her divorce and the move to her small Rialto flat, where a ginger cat awaited her every evening. But on the first Tuesday of October, that comfortable hum gained a dissonant note. She stepped into carriage 3 at Charlemont and paused by seat 22B. Someone had scrawled a line in smudgy blue biro across the vinyl backrest, 2010 Cowan Falls. Wife clicked her ticket puncher against her palm. Graffiti usually meant football chants or sweethearts declaring undying devotion. A name and the word Falls was odder than most, but she shrugged, made a mental note to email maintenance, and continued her round. That night, the graffiti was the last thing on her mind when she flicked on the evening news. A cycling correspondent reported that Councillor Peter Cowan had been injured at around 8 p.m. when he toppled from his bicycle on the Grand Canal cycle path. Cowan Falls, Awif murmured, eyes narrowing. The accident's time, 8:20, matched the 2010 if you bent the numbers into a 24-hour clock. Coincidence, she told herself. Dublin was full of Cowans, and yet the next morning she strode directly to 22B. The ink was still there, but someone had added a second line underneath, 2310 Luttrell derails. Seat 22B faced a window smeared with October drizzle and a view of old Georgian terraces. Awif traced the fresh letters with a gloved finger. A derailment. Trams couldn't derail easily, short of catastrophic track failure. She typed Luttrell into her phone. Luttrell's town? Luttrell is a surname, she supposed. Maybe it was another random scrap of nonsense. After her shift, curiosity won. She stopped by Harold's Cross Garda station and asked an old school friend, Sergeant Declan Ward, if anyone named Cowan had been in an evening accident. Councillor Cowan, yeah, he confirmed. Poor lad's cracked 3 ribs. Why? It was on a seat, Awif replied, feeling foolish. Declan arched an eyebrow, but promised to ring her if anything else matched mysterious seat predictions. 4 nights later, Awif was feeding her cat when RTA flashed with breaking news. A freight train at Luttrell's town had jumped the track. No injuries, but a fright and a mess of containers. 23 October. Luttrell derails. She stood frozen, cat food suspended. Once could be coincidence, twice was somebody sending warnings. But who? And how did they know? She patted the cat, grabbed her coat, and hopped back on a late tram to the depot. Her colleagues thought her zealous, but she convinced a yawning cleaner to let her on to carriage 3. There, beneath the 2 existing lines, a third had appeared. 28:10, Josephine headlines. Awif copied the words into her notebook, heart thumping. Josephine who? She searched again. Josephine Barry, the pop singer, was booked to perform on RTE's Saturday chat show on the 28th. Headlines? Maybe a harmless joke. Yet if headlines meant harm coming to Josephine, Awif wanted no part in watching another prediction unfold. She needed help. The next day she rode the full loop until she found Mr. Lorcan Byrne, a retired newspaper cryptographer who boarded near Ranelagh every Wednesday, with the Irish Times tucked beneath his arm. He was thin, stooped, and possessed the kind of eyes that saw 6 steps ahead in a crossword. Mr. Byrne, Awif began, sliding into the adjacent seat. "May I bend your ear?" He blinked. "As long as you don't ask for marriage. I've been happily widowed for 20 years and intend to stay that way." She laughed despite anxious knots in her stomach and showed him a photo of the graffiti. He took out wire-rimmed spectacles and studied the lines. "Someone is playing Oracle," he said finally. "Or hoaxer. Patterns, Ms. Healy, live in the gaps. We must examine what's missing." Oif pulled out her notebook. "Dates are 5 days apart, 20th, 23rd, 28th. Each phrase is surname plus verb. Could just be prank predictions of disasters." "Pranks," he murmured, "rarely coincide so neatly with real accidents. Might your prophet be riding this tram?" "It's always on this very carriage, seat 22B. "Ah," he said, delighted. "A stage, then, and perhaps an audience." They decided on surveillance. Lorcan produced from his coat an ancient Olympus camera, the kind that still clicked film. Aoife arranged for the seat to be cleaned, but only partially. She asked the maintenance crew to erase the first 2 lines and leave the fresh prediction untouched, under the guise of testing a solvent. Meanwhile, she requisitioned a tiny security camera from the Lewis lost and found cupboard, technically inventory, she whispered, and fixed it to a lighting bracket above the aisle, its lens pointing at 22B. Friday the 27th crept in. Aoife and Lorcan met for lunch at Bewley's Cafe to review their plan. The feed from her borrowed camera would loop to her phone. Lorcan would ride the tram all afternoon with a copy of Ulysses, disguising his camera click behind page turns. Aoife would float in and out under the pretext of random inspections. At 14:40, a push notification pinged, movement at seat 22B. Aoife ducked into a cold carriage. A teenage lad in a Trinity sweatshirt sat there, scribbling on a notebook. He wasn't defacing anything. He merely used the seat as a desk. False alarm. By 19 the tram grew rowdy with Friday revellers. Oif's phone buzzed again. This time, the still image showed a woman in a mustard coat hunched over the vinyl back with a chunky silver marker. Heart pounding, Oif radioed Lorcan. "Target spotted. Carriage 3, seat 22B, writing." Lorcan shuffled down the aisle in what he hoped was an inconspicuous pace for an octogenarian. He clicked a photo just as the woman capped her marker. She slipped the pen into her coat, looked around, and exited at Dawson Street. Aoife hurried after, but by the time she reached the platform, the mustard coat had dissolved into evening crowds. Lorcan joined her, breathless. "I have her face, half of it, anyway. Silhouette plus chin. She's left-handed." "Did you see what she wrote?" Oif asked. They boarded the next tram back to the depot and checked. A new line glimmered in fresh ink beneath Josephine headlines. 31:10 Ha'penny bleeds Halloween. The Ha'penny Bridge arched over the Liffey, always packed with tourists and love-locked padlocks. Bleeds conjured horrifying imagery. Oif shivered. "We need to stop this." Lorcan adjusted his scarf. "First, head off whatever is planned for Josephine on the 28th. We tip the Gardaí? And say what? A lady in mustard foretold injury to a pop star because a Dublin tram seat said so? Frame it differently," he advised. "Anonymous threat concerning Ms. Barry. They'll post extra security. Little harm in that." I've rang Sergeant Ward, who sighed but listened. "We've already a detail for the show," he conceded. "I'll beef it up." Saturday night, Aif watched the live broadcast from her couch. Josephine Barry opened the show in a sequined suit, belting a new single. Halfway through, she slipped on a cable. The gasp in the studio was audible, but 2 security men leapt, steadied her, and she laughed it off. Almost made the wrong kind of headlines, she joked to the host. Aoif exhaled. Pattern broken? Maybe partial injury avoided was enough. Yet when Aoif climbed aboard Carriage 3 at dawn on the 29th, a thick red line had been drawn through Josephine headlines, and beneath her penny bleeds. Someone had added 0311. O'Connell Burns Lorcan frowned at the graffiti. Red line suggests the prophecy was thwarted or cancelled. Good show. But the author continues. Wife paced the aisle. Bleeds is in 2 days. Burns 3 days after that. Interval shrinking. 5, 3, 2, 3. A rhythm like breathing, speeding up. Perhaps escalating until climax. Lorcan tapped the marker strokes. Our vandal is working after service ends. We must catch her tonight in the depot. Oif secured permission from her supervisor to conduct a security drill. That meant hiding in the staff closet at the back of Carriage 3 from 1 a.m. after the trams were washed and lights dimmed. Lorcan, exhilarated, armed himself with a flask of tea and a notebook. They wedged open the closet door and watched seat 22B through slits. At 2:11, footsteps echoed. A slender figure entered from the connecting corridor, flashlight kept low. Mustard coat. She knelt, uncapped her silver marker, and started writing. Lorcan filmed with his mobile. Oif held her breath. 5, Ellis weeps. And that, whispered Lorcan, makes 5. Eoife pushed the closet door. It squeaked. The woman froze. Eoife emerged, badge out. Stop, Luas security. The woman bolted toward the driver's cab. Lorcan called Eoif a holy terror and lumbered after. They cornered the vandal between seats. She swung her flashlight, but Oif caught her wrist. Gardaí are on the way, Oif lied. Who are you? Why these messages? The woman's eyes flashed hazel in the dimness. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She sagged onto a seat, breath shaking. My name's Deirdre Kinsella. I have dreams. Each time I ride this tram, I see the next accident. If I don't write it down, the dream follows me home. Writing on the seat gives it away, lets it bleed out, sometimes weakens it. It doesn't always stop the event, just dulls it. Oif and Lorcan exchanged looks. Psycho? Or something stranger? How long? Oif asked. Since August. Started small, dog bites, cafe fires. Then bigger. The tram helps. It's the place I can't explain. Tears carved shiny tracks. Cowan still broke ribs, didn't he? The freight train derailed. I'm sorry. I do what I can. Lorcan, neither believer nor skeptic, asked, why predictions accelerate? Deirdre pressed palms together. Dreams get louder if ignored. You cleaned the seat after Cowan and Train. The words were erased, so the dreams wrote themselves harder. They want to be heard. Oif pinched the bridge of her nose. Look, Deirdre, true or not, this is criminal damage and panic. People could be hurt. People will be hurt, Deirdre whispered, if you don't pay attention. The Halfpenny Bridge on Halloween, someone will bleed. O'Connell Street on the 3rd, fire. Ellis on the 5th, grief. I don't know who Ellis is. Silence pooled around them. Oif recalled the line slashed red. The accident Josephine escaped. Maybe Deirdre did help. Or maybe security saved Josephine. Hard evidence favoured the latter. And yet, Lorcan poured tea into the cap and offered it to Deirdre. If you truly aim to prevent tragedy, let us help you do so legally. Oif nodded. No more graffiti. We share info with Gardaí. 3 heads better than 1. Deirdre looked between them. All right, arrest me if you must. But first listen. They sat in a depot break room smelling of bleach and diesel, while Deirdre recounted her visions. The Halfpenny Bleeds scene, a street performer's sword-swallowing act gone wrong, crowd screaming, blood spattering the white wood slats of the bridge. O'Connell burns, a tourist's discarded cigarette touching spilled petrol near a souvenir stall, flames licking stone pillars. Ellis weeps, a woman named Ellis sobbing beside a canal, dropping something into the water, something precious. Lorcan jotted details. Can you see times? Early evening, she said of the bridge, dusk for the fire, dawn for the canal. Oif sucked her teeth. Halloween on the halfpenny will be jammed. Gardaí can station medics. We warn them discreetly. Uncontrolled blades near crowds. Fine. Fire on O'Connell. Ban open flames at stalls. Inspect generators. And Ellis? Lorcan asked. Deirdre shook her head. I see the name on a running bib, like a marathon vest. Maybe a race. The remembrance runs on the 5th in Phoenix Park, Oif said. But Ellis Canal, confusing. They drafted an anonymous email to Dublin Metropolitan Garda, describing safety concerns at the Halfpenny Bridge performance, O'Connell Street stalls, and a woman runner named Ellis prone to self-harm near water. Deirdre insisted on anonymity. Oif promised misdirection. Halloween arrived wet and blustery. Oif took unpaid leave to watch the bridge. Lorcan stood on the north bank. Deirdre wandered the south, hood up. Cosplayers, tourists, and trick-or-treaters milled. At 17:32, a busker in pale makeup set up a small amplifier and produced, exactly as Deirdre described, a gleaming sword. Garda officers, primed by the anonymous tip, approached politely. They requested performance permits, examined the weapon, and discovered its handle was loose. They confiscated the sword until repairs could be made. The busker argued but relented. Crowd dispersed, no blood. Deirdre hugged herself with relief. Oif almost believed. 2 days later, 0311 O'Connell Burns loomed. The Gardaí enforced temporary bans on portable generators and fuel near vendor stalls for a charity fair. Mid-afternoon, a wife strolled past a planter outside the GPO. A tourist flicked a cigarette that arced toward a plastic jerrycan behind a coffee cart, someone ignoring the ban. A wife darted, kicked the cigarette aside, scolded the tourist in such fluent Hiberno English, he apologized repeatedly. Moments later, a Garda officer confiscated the illegal petrol. Again, crisis averted, but the dream of Ellis still stood. That night, Deirdre phoned, voice shaking. It's changing. Ellis isn't running now. She's by the canal at Portobello Harbour. Dawn. She drops a red backpack, then disappears. I've banged pots in her kitchenette, thinking. Liveline radio played faintly. The host interviewed a woman named Dr. Claire Ellis about mental health resources for students. Portobello area housed Griffith College. Could it be her? Aoife rang Declan. Any missing persons named Ellis? None. She tried university directories, found Dr. Claire Ellis listed as adjunct lecturer. Photo matched the radio voice. Deirdre confirmed. That's her face. Sunday, 5th November, 5 a.m. Mist coiled over the canal. Oif, Lorcan, and Deirdre waited near the footbridge. They drank coffee from a flask and listened to seagulls cry in the half-light. At 6:13, footsteps approached. A woman in a long coat, red backpack over one shoulder, paused at the railing. Deirdre tensed. It's her. Claire Ellis unzipped the bag, took out a framed photograph. Tears shimmered. She placed the frame on the balustrade, reached inside again, producing a small urn. She unscrewed the lid. Oif stepped forward gently. Dr. Ellis. The woman startled. I'm Oifa Healy with the tram service, Oif said, realizing how absurd that sounded. Are you all right? I'm fine. Just saying goodbye. Deirdre's voice floated soft as fog. May we join you? Dr. Ellis blinked at these three strangers. She nodded numbly. They gathered. Claire's husband, a firefighter, had died the previous year in a warehouse blaze, 3 November, O'Connell Street area. He'd loved early walks by this canal. She waited until the anniversary crowds passed to scatter his ashes. She feared she might lose courage at the last moment. Ellis weeps, Oif murmured. Not fatal, but grief. The prophecy needed witnessing, not thwarting. Oif and Deirdre stood with Claire as she tipped ashes into black water. Lorcan hummed a low hymn. Claire cried, yes, but then smiled. Something she hadn't done in months, she admitted. After she left, dawn blushed peach over the rooftops. Deirdre exhaled long. Dream's quiet now. Oif looked at Lorcan. Do you believe her? He adjusted his hat. I believe in preventive action. Works whether the visions are magic or marvelous intuition. Oif turned to Deirdre. The seat stays clean from now on. No more graffiti. Deirdre nodded. I'll keep a journal instead. Come to you with anything urgent. Deal. Weeks passed, winter nipping. No prophecies appeared. No unusual accidents reached Aweef's ears. On the 12th of December, she, Lorcan, Deirdre and Sergeant Ward met at Doheny and Nesbitt for pints and mince pies. Deirdre had dreamed only ordinary things. Lost wallets, minor sprains. Aweef forwarded tips to Declan, who handled them without fuss. Yet Aweef couldn't resist boarding carriage 3 one quiet night after closing. She walked the aisle, running fingers over smooth, unmarked vinyl. Seat 22B felt like any other. Cold, green, faintly humming with electric heat. She sat, listening to the distant city pulse, and wondered whether fate could truly be negotiated by 3 amateurs on a tram. As she rose to leave, her phone buzzed. Message from Deirdre. All clear, swear it. Afe smiled, slipped the phone away, and patted the backrest with affection. For the first time in ages, life felt as cosily aligned as the clack of wheels along tracks. Whatever tomorrow brought, she had friends, purpose, and a place amid Dublin's everyday magic. The tram lights dimmed to night mode, guiding her to the exit. Behind her, seat 22B reflected a placid amber glow. Blank, harmless, as though it had never warned of doom at all.